You know, when you buy a new action camera and you're so excited to see how it can perform and how well the video fidelity is, well, I bought the Insta360 X3 and I have to say I'm not quite impressed with the visual fidelity. So in this video I'll be testing out different picture profiles and different settings to get the most out of my Insta360 X3. So let's go. Okay, the necessary selfie stick, and then I'll switch to this camera and do most of the video on this Insta360. Oh, nice. Okay, so this first setting is all auto exposure and standard colors. Now, when it comes to exposure and the exposure settings, it's really important to have them set correctly. Now, if it's a moving camera and a moving subject, then you need to have the shutter speed fast enough to get clear images so that the in-body image stabilization works and you don't get that mushy and blurry looking footage. But if you set your camera somewhere where it's stationary, you might as well go with that 1/50th of a second shutter speed, lower down the ISO to 100, and then you will get the best possible quality out of your camera because of that low ISO. Now, even though this camera has a half-inch sensor, actually it has two of them, one on each side, it's still not big enough to work with really high ISO. So anything beyond ISO 400 is gonna be a challenge for such a small camera. Now, this is the vivid picture profile and the exposure is set to auto just as was before in the standard picture profile, but this one is a little bit more contrasty and a little bit more saturated. I don't like this image profile because I think there's absolutely no room for post-production correction. So this is the one I'm using now, and I've just tried it once and I will never use it. But it should look good straight out of the camera if you have that taste. Now, this is the log picture profile and it's Insta360's high dynamic range logarithmic image profile, although I'm not really sure if it's actually a log image profile. Now, there is an official LUT on the website which transforms the log into Rec 709, but in my experience it just adds too much saturation and zero contrast, and you need to tone down the shadows if you want to get rid of all of the artifacts and the noise that this picture profile brings with it. So I tried this in the beginning and I'm not really a fan of it, to be perfectly honest. And the last picture profile that you can use on this camera is actually the HDR mode. It's like the logarithmic image profile but already color graded, so you do have a higher dynamic range, and well, this is a bad experience because I'm totally dark and the background is totally bright. But if I was to switch to standard picture profile, you can see that it's a lot worse. It's a lot more contrasty. The darks are completely dark and the brights are completely bright. So the HDR is actually quite useful in this scenario. Now, to give you a comparison between the HDR and the log picture profile, well, you can see the difference. This one does have a lot more detail, but there's also a lot of these artifacts and a lot of the noise hidden everywhere. So it's really hard to get rid of, and even if you use the AI noise artifacts, whatever, grain removal from the Insta360 app, it's still not going to do a good job, and you have to denoise in post-production anyway. The one thing I have to mention when you're using the HDR mode is that you have zero control over the exposure, so no shutter speed adjustment, no ISO adjustment. The only thing you can adjust is the white balance. And here right now I'm using the standard mode and I've manually set the exposure, otherwise it would be really dark. Now, I end up using HDR mode for the most of my videos because I feel it's a nice balance between dynamic range and how the end result looks, and you get a good looking image straight out of the camera. It's just not very useful for very dark scenarios, so in that case I would rather go with the standard picture profile, avoid the log and avoid the vivid in any situation. But there's also one thing with this camera that was kind of a letdown when I used it for the first time, and this is the 4K mode. Now, if you only have the single lens mode selected, so you're filming just through one lens, you can set your resolution up to 4K, but it's still going to be an upscaled resolution from that 5.7 360 degree field of view, which brings me to that 5.7K resolution. Now, that is for the whole 360 degree captured with both cameras or with both lenses, and you can only get around 1080p resolution when you're reframing in post-production. So even if you export your videos in 4K, if you have them zoomed in quite a lot, it's going to look like crap. It's actually going to look more like 720p than even 1080p, and really far away from that 4K resolution. So this was my short test of the Insta360 X3 picture profiles. Which one did you like the most? Leave a comment down below, and if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and hit the like button for the algorithm. This really helps YouTube to promote my channel, and it helps me a lot as a content creator. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.